Hello and welcome to Lecture 3 on personality. So in this lecture we're going to look at animals and personality, specifically cats and pandas. So we know that animals, across circumstances, might display consistent individual differences in behavior, and that those individual differences might reflect underlying biological bases of personality, which would be temperament. There are findings from 19 studies that assessed multiple personality traits in non-human animals. These studies found evidence of personality traits, such as extroversion and emotionality, that are observed in many species, including humans. Now, as I told you, my fascination with personality and temperament is introversion and extroversion, and I'm really fascinated with that in mammals, in non-human mammals. So first we're going to look at cats. There was a study done in Australia, and they've come up with what's called the Feline 5. And this is related to the concept of the Big Five trait theory of personality for humans. And we haven't gotten to that yet in our lecture. But we will get to talking about trait theories later on. So they, with this study in Australia and in New Zealand, they studied thousands of cats, and they did come up with a personality profile that allowed, or personality test that would allow them to profile individual cats. So I did that test for my cat, Mishka. This little cutie pie right here. She's a Siamese, and Mishka is very friendly. She's never met a stranger. So, this chart shows you the basics of the Feline 5. So the Feline 5 personality traits: skittishness, outgoingness, dominance, spontaneity, and friendliness. And again, I really found it interesting that there's actual research, good research, to back up this theory. So I did the test, and if you go to Moodle in the folder on personality resources, you'll find a link to the Feline Big Five test. So if you have a cat, or have had a cat, you can do the test for them. I also found one for canines that is much newer, and there hasn't been, I cannot find an easy to score test for your dogs, but I did post a link to the test itself and to the dissertation of the person who wrote the test and researched it. And it's interesting. So you can find all of that on Moodle. So Mishka tested typically low on skittishness, very high on outgoingness, typically high on dominance, typical low to low on spontaneity, and typically high to high on friendliness. And I think that these are a good reflection of Mishka's personality. So, skittishness, typical low, outgoing, very high, dominance, typical high, spontaneity, typical low to low, and friendliness, typical high to high. So what does this mean? Skittishness. Cats that are skittish, so if a cat is skittish, they would test as high. So a skittish cat would be anxious and fearful of other people and other cats, where cats like Mishka that rank typical low on skittishness are calm, they're trusting. So Mishka's well adjusted to her environment, and she is very calm and trusting. Outgoingness. Mishka is extremely high on outgoingness. So The test says, she may benefit from additional toys and playtime, and that's definitely true. Mishka does need a lot of cognitive stimulation. She's a very intelligent cat, and so she can get bored sometimes, and a bored cat can be a handful. So we just make sure Mishka doesn't get too bored. So cats that are outgoing tend to be curious and active, and that's definitely Mishka. Cats that are low on outgoingness tend to be aimless. They quit on things, they'll start an activity, but they give it up really fast. Then dominant. Mishka ranks as typical high on dominance. So this test would says that she would experience difficulties being around other cats, both in the home and in her neighborhood. And this is definitely true. Now, we've never had two cats at the same time, so I don't know how Mishka would do with another cat inside the home, but I do know she is extremely reactive when she sees a cat when she's watching Kitty Big Screen TV, which is basically the front window. She gets extremely reactive when she sees other cats, so I do think she would have a difficult time having a feline sibling. And that's because she ranks high on dominance. And then we get to spontaneity. And Mishka is typical low to low. So this means Mishka's well adjusted to her environment and that she probably enjoys routine. This is definitely the case. Mishka enjoys her life to be predictable. She doesn't like change at all. She likes what she likes, she wants what she wants, and one of the things she wants is for life to be predictable and routine. So for cats, For cats high on spontaneity, they're going to be more impulsive and erratic. Cats that are low, like Mishka, tend to be predictable and they are more constrained. They're more reserved. So that's going to correlate with extroversion in humans. And then friendliness. Typical high to high. This is also going to correlate with extroversion in humans. Mishka adjusts well to other people and animals in the home. And this is definitely true. We have a guinea pig. It's kind of hard. They don't really get to interact very much except sniff each other through the cage bars. Guinea pig thinks she's the best thing in the whole wide world. Mishka definitely adjusts well to other people. She's never met a stranger. Everyone is her new best friend. So these traits reflect the biology of personality for cats. Just like, with temperament and personality in humans, these are Mishka's typical tendencies. And they're a reflection of her biology. So I'm going to move on to pandas. If you've read my profile, you've read that I'm a live camera operator for Explore.org. And I work with a bunch of animals. I do pandas, brown bears, black bears, polar bears, I do seals, eagles, and I know, northern lights, and I know there's another animal that I'm forgetting. So I work with a lot of the different animal cameras, but pandas are the cameras that I work the most. And so there is no research on panda personality. The species is very threatened. There's only about 1,800 in the world. So, right now researchers are still trying to save the species. They're not really all that focused on panda cognition, except where it comes to how to help pandas survive in the wild. So I'm using these 3 cubs to highlight the temperament concepts we looked at in lecture 13.2. On Moodle, in the folder titled Chapter 13 Personality Lecture Videos, you'll find these 4 videos, and they're all short. So I'd like you to watch these. The second video, Lungpan Barks at a Keeper, Watch that twice. You don't hear the bark the first time you watch it because it happens right at the beginning. But when you watch it a second time, you'll hear it. So go take a look at those. Welcome back. Those cubs are adorable. They are so much fun. And they are perfect for this lecture because each of them they are very different. And it's been such a delight to have all three of them at the same time and watch their personalities unfold as they've been developing this past year. So the first cub we're going to look at is Longpan. Now, Longpan is one of twin girls, and she is a very active panda, which is interesting because her twin sister is low on activity. She's high. So if you remember when we were looking at the videos on infant temperament, they ranked infants on activity, emotionality, and sociability. I want to do the same thing with these three cubs. So Longpan is high on activity. I'm not able to rate her on emotionality. She's also extremely social. She thrives with frequent interaction with her siblings, her mother, and her human keepers. Panda cubs really like people. So she's very, very social. And she's out and about a lot of her day. Maypan, her sister, is quite different. Maypan is extremely low on the activity scale. She's the least active panda cub I've ever seen. And I've been doing this for a couple of years now. It's surprising how, I won't say she's inactive, but her level of activity on a temperament basis is quite low. She's a normal, healthy, happy panda cub. It's just that she's low on activity, which correlates to extroversion. On emotionality, I have no way of knowing. Sociability. Maypan spends she's very low, and she spends most of her time indoors, which I've never seen with a panda cub. And it took a little while to kind of get used to that. I was looking at all my panda photos, and I have very few photos of her because she's inside all the time. That's just her preference. She's allowed to come and go as much as she wants. She just likes the world inside better than outside. Or she'll stay out. When she goes outside, she'll stay right next to her den door. She just likes home. She doesn't play outside often. When she does go to play with her sister, the play sessions are short. And she's more independent than most cubs her age. And then Shin Chin. Shin Chin is adorable. He's a little firecracker. He is extremely high on activity. He is by far the most active panda cub I've ever observed. He's quite exuberant. Emotionality, I can't really say. I will say that he lives life quite enthusiastically. But it's pretty hard to judge a panda's personality on emotionality through a camera screen. Sociability. He is very high on sociability. He has a high need for social interaction. Now he's getting older, he spends more time on his own, eating and things like that, but he has a high need for interaction. It's a good thing that his mother is a very experienced mother, because I think if this was her first cub, I think he would be too much for any first-time panda mother. He is a handful, but he is such a joy at the same time. This cub never stops. He's so active and so social that I think for his keepers he's a handful, and I think they laugh a lot during the day. So that's the end of this lecture.